Sorry, another thing that did come to mind was a finance package the government is offering. Now, me
Yes.
as a small company, I think you've seen the size of my operation. I kind of do things of loads of help with friends and family, and some of the finance packages that are out there aren't. I'm falling right between the cracks. It's quite unfortunate for me.
Yeah.
But
So I think that the overall package, the feedback I've had from my constituents is the overall package has gone beyond most people's expectations, particularly the job retention scheme, where the government, for the first time in history, the British government is stepping in to pay people's wages so that they've still got a job to go back to after this. Likewise for 90% of the self-employed, 80% of their average earnings up to £2,500 a month is being covered. I am, however, taking up very strongly with the Treasury a couple of areas where I think the government does need to complete the last couple of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, if you like. One of those is small companies, owner-directors, where perhaps it's only them or one or two other staff, who equally, probably more often than not, perfectly legitimately, pay themselves mostly by dividend rather than PAYE.
yeah,
People in that category have definitely fallen through the cracks, and I've written to the Chancellor a number of times with specific cases, and actually earlier today I wrote to him in a more general way saying, look, we really do need to plug the gap here, because there are a lot of people who are in a very desperate place at the moment who have structured themselves in that way. And secondly, there's this £50,000 cap on the self-employed, where if you've earned over £50,000 a year for the last few years, then you don't get the self-employed support. Now, I understand why that is in place from one end of the spectrum, but actually that's caught out quite a lot of people who maybe earn £55,000 a year through their self-employment. They're probably geared in debt up to that, whether it's their mortgage at home or whether it's finance packages they've got on equipment or vehicles to actually do their business. And those bills obviously do need to be paid. And so I've also asked the Chancellor if he will look at that again. But as a whole package, I'm really proud of what Rishi Sunak and the whole team at the Treasury have delivered, that essentially means we are going to have an economy to go back to after this crisis. People are going to have jobs to go back to after this crisis. And it really has been an extraordinary few weeks where the Treasury has had to react in virtually no time to a place where essentially the government is paying people's wages, and hopefully that will see us through this and mean that the economy can be strong again quicker than otherwise it would have been once this crisis is behind us.
it's a good point. I mean, where I was coming from is there was 80% has been backed by the government, and the other 20%, the banks are turning around and saying, you got to put your house up. I mean, I know there's been a limit. I think it's 25,000 or 50,000.
Yeah. So, yes, when the Chancellor first announced the government-backed loans, a lot of the banks ran away and basically went down the business as usual track for them. That's not what the government asked of them. And fresh guidance was issued by the Treasury to the banks on Friday to try and fix some of those problems, to stop them asking for massive personal guarantees on these loans, because that wasn't the point of the scheme in the first place. And hopefully companies now can start to get the loans they need, the government-backed loans they need for their business continuity. And I would encourage any business in Buckinghamshire that is struggling to get the support that they think they are due during this crisis to get in contact with Buckinghamshire Business First. If you put that into Google, you'll find their website. They're offering some fantastic support to businesses, and they're also administering a £2 million fund that has been put up by the Local Enterprise Partnership as an additional source of funds to help Buckinghamshire businesses through this crisis, and they're administering the process by which businesses can apply for that.
Okay, what about people with bad credit? Are they going to be able to access these loans? That's another question.
They should be able to, so long as they are a viable business. The question on this is was the business viable before the crisis hit? Of course, the crisis in its own right will make a lot of businesses non-viable, which is why the government is stepping in with these various schemes, be it the business rates relief, VAT deferral, the job retention scheme, the business continuity loans, whatever it may be. If the business wasn't viable, let's say in December or January before this crisis hit, then there is a legitimate question mark over whether the taxpayer should bail that company out.
So let's just say, for instance, FBL. FBL has been.
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing this. We're in our third year now. Wow, and we've covered so much. Live in the park and all the stuff the Town Council. Obviously, a drop of a hat. We thought we'd cover the elections and cover the hustings, and we have Joe Morrissey on Wednesday from Beaconsfield on. Hopefully, still got to confirm that. But so as I've been trading, coming into my third year, you're saying I'm a viable company then. Where if you just started a company up in December, that's where the issues are going to be. That is
a more tricky place to be. But again, I would encourage people to talk to Buckinghamshire Business First, because they've got people there that can help and advise and get people in the right place to access the right support that the government is offering.
Okay, yeah. Again, I'm joint to Bucks Business First, so I've been to a couple of their meetings, and it is worth joining. You don't have to pay as well. It does actually say that there's certain types of membership, but you don't have to pay, and especially if you're starting up, it's really handy.
For their coronavirus support, there's no question of membership for them to give coronavirus support, advice, or indeed help you access the £2 million fund from the Local Enterprise Partnership.
That's really good information. I'm glad we've done this interview.